Are you a man who is suffering in silence, maybe with your mental health, or you have in the past? Well, I certainly have many, many times. So today, I really wanted to touch on my perspective as to why I have done this, and I believe this may be the case for many guys I've spoken to, and actually what you can do about it if you feel like you're alone and then a little bit isolated. That has personally helped me. So I've felt it was really important to talk about what I found today because, yeah, it's still something where, like, I think society in general is aware of men suffering in silence, and not everyone. There's still work to be done. But like about men suffering in silence and their mental health, and I think what's not talked about enough is to why it is and what we can do to kind of fix that. Now, I hear again, this is just my perception and my truth, right? And I'm very clear. I'm not a mental health professional. Um, I'm not coming at that angle. I'm just a man sharing his experience on this podcast and what I've known that has worked for people when they've gone from like a real down. I'm always observing, like even when I help people with podcasts, I'm always observing what's working and what's not, and what works for me, and trying things. And that's what I'm just sharing with you to do today. But yeah, like I know that there's certain things I feel that can impact on us keeping it all to ourselves. And for me, I know I've shared and actually felt a lot worse after I shared because of the person's response to me. Now, you can't control someone else's response and other people, but you can choose who you share with. And sometimes, yeah, you're not going to be get it right all the time. You may share something, um, and it's not the right person, but don't let that stop you. And I've talked about that with some recent podcast guests as well. I had a great conversation with Joe the other day, who's helping guys really in like the police force and sort of all services in the states with their mental health, and we were talking about this as well. And I also believe that for me personally, it's been like my reputation, to women, because I'm worried what women will think, because there's this kind of like belief or perception that you got to appear strong to women, or else you might be less attractive. You won't be seen as a leader. You might be seen as weak. That's personally what's gone through my head, and I know speaking to other guys that's the case as well. And I found a way to really, really help that as well. So yeah, I really want to go through some points today on this in particular that have really helped me. There's so much significance often that I've had in my life. I know lots. We live in a significance-driven world. It's like I got more likes, I got more comments, I got more followers, and it's like if we share a weakness, sometimes it can be perceived as like or vulnerability. It can be perceived as a weakness. That's what I meant to say, right? And that's not always the case. Now, I do think there's a time and place of vulnerability, and like you don't want to be vulnerable all the time to everyone, right? And we're going to go into that a little bit. But I feel like sometimes when you share and then it's not heard or someone's betrayed you, it puts you off. But don't let that put you off, because the right people will hold space. Trust me, I've like talked to people and I felt worse. I've talked to people and I'm like so relieved I did, and I felt love and connection, because some people receive really well, and when you share something with them and are there for you for the whole of the space, it's just a case of finding them sometimes, right? So here are some points that I really wanted to share with you today. The first one is finding a healthy way to communicate to yourself. It always starts with yourself. I'm not talking about bottling it up to yourself, by the way. I'm talking about if you can start a narrative with yourself that really allows you to communicate with how you're feeling of yourself, that's going to build a better relationship with yourself, and therefore you're going to be able to communicate with others better. So it doesn't mean you have to journal. Journal's one way. It could mean like a voice note to yourself. It could mean just talking to yourself. Like I quite like doing that a lot. It could be just meditating to yourself and having some inner dialogue. Find a way that you find best to communicate with yourself, right? And that's really going to aid you to kind of talk through things yourself and then use that as a foundation to speak to other people when you're struggling with something. Even if it's just very basics, don't be a perfectionist. That's another tip I'll say. Like, don't worry about the message coming out perfect. Sometimes you just got to start and it comes out of you, right? The second thing, trial and error of people, right? Like, don't be so fearful that if, like, what if I share with the wrong person? I'm going to be honest that there is a chance that someone may not receive what you're saying, but there's also a very great chance that someone will. But suffering in silence always and not speaking to anyone is really painful, right? So it's about understanding people. And also, I'd say trust your instinct on it. If you're feeling like, I don't really trust this person, listen to that. You don't have to share with them. Sometimes people will be there for you. Like, I know a lot of people who are great, amazing human beings. And when I've been in challenging times, they said things like, I'm here for you to share. And I'm like, I appreciate that, but I'm okay, thank you. I've got someone else I'm talking to. Because I know they can't listen. Some people are just not good listeners. Like, I'm always trying to improve that skill. Like, there are definitely better listeners than me. There's a lot worse listeners than me, and that's something I've really built up over time, like being with people. Because a good listener is a really rare quality. Like, I remember sharing something really vulnerable with one of my best mates, and he was a well-intentioned. This was years ago, but he's a really well-intentioned human being. He didn't say anything nasty back or anything like that. How he responded though was just his level, and I have no judgment for that. Where he was at, he immediately flipped the situation to himself and started talking about his problems. And he was like, nothing to be ashamed of, mate. Which to me, when I shared something, and that was good, and I appreciated that. But and it's not about him saying the perfect thing, but I just wanted someone to share the space with. I wanted to get into my feminine energy at that point because we all have different energies, and just someone to hold the structure. And then he started going into his, and it just wasn't a good mix, right? So knowing that you sometimes, and then I've like had coaches who are just like guys who'd worked on themselves so much, like in men's work, men's coaches, and you just talk to them and they just hold the space for you. And then they may give challenge and suggestions to help you grow as well, which is beautiful. The next point I want to share is be inspired by other stories. Like, listen to guys who have gone through challenges. There's plenty if you go onto like YouTube and podcasts. There's many guys who have gone through challenges. So get inspired by them. No, it's not about just listening to stuff and then keeping stuff to your own. Of course, like, reach out to people and then find the people right for you. But actually listening to inspiring stories, I found has really, really helped, and seeing how far people have gone. Now, there are some people, I'm going to be, as always, I'm very honest. There's some people who do like to be kept so much in the story of, all life's a challenge and things are really hard. And even though you appreciate the vulnerability, it's kind of the same thing again and again. So I do like people who are empowered but can share like how they've moved through things, right? So yeah, that's one thing I say. If you don't get caught in the whole loop of someone who's just like sharing their story and they're like, oh, it's really hard, all these kind of things, right? Because there are people to be inspired by. The final point I'm going to share is men's groups, really powerful. I'm in one, it's called 13 Pines. I'm not an affiliate or anything, it's just awesome. And it's really good value. It's like, I think it's only $33 a month and a free trial, which is crazy. You spend more on a meal than that a month, and you've got brotherhood and people around you. Again, I'm not promoting it. It's just amazing. But yeah, we get together on Zoom and talk. We've done like, I've been to an in-person with them as well in London. But yeah, it's like a bunch of people, guys you can be there with. And that's really encouraging, particularly if maybe you're in a romantic relationship or you're dating, and you want to take some of those challenges, those frustrations to somewhere and talk it out with men who can hear you and be there for you. That can be a really powerful way as well. So that's what I really want to share with you as well. Why I believe I suffered in silence in the past and why men do, because Sometimes we're not heard by people. We have this reputation, this significance. But actually, things you can start to do is communicate healthily with yourself to begin with. Loving yourself is really, really key. Then trying and trial and error of people, really testing different people, being inspired by other people, and then men's groups is a really powerful one as well. So I appreciate you for being here, and remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.